Mayor and Council, and everyone in attendance. Jersey Central does, in fact, supply the power to the Township of Bedminster. We service that through 4 substations. Chambers Brook, which is actually out of Flemington. We support 1,290 customers on that circuit in that substation. Greater Crossroads, which services 2,556 customers. PPAC substation, which serves 1,262 customers. And finally, the Somerset substation, which only serves 279 customers. We're here tonight to discuss the outage that occurred in the Hills, which is primarily serviced by Chambers Brook and PPAC. Chambers Brook was the substation that did have the outage. The outage happened Saturday morning at approximately 7:56 a.m. What happened was there was ice and wind at that time. A pin on top of the cross arm, which is on the top of the pole, where your primary wires run through to connect to other poles or spans of wire. Apparently a pin came loose and the 2 wires touched, causing a spark and a fire, which also took out what we call a cutout. Crew was notified at that time. They were responded quickly. The outage in total, I believe, was 148 minutes, which is approximately 2.5 hours. During a windstorm and coming out of Summit District, which is, I think, 10 to 12 miles away, we were very lucky to be able to find the outage right away, restore right away, and get people back right in service. There is a little history with the Hills in Bedminster. John Anderson, who once served as the area manager, is now the VP of External Affairs, so we all work for John. Rob Walton was the previous predecessor here. They worked extremely hard to get rid of a lot of the outages in the Wood Duck Pond section of the Hills, and we did that primarily by changing the way we fed some of the customers, because depending on how you're fed, you could be in power, but your neighbor across the street may have an outage. And we had a period of a 2-year span where we had 6 or 7 outages in the Wood Pond section. So what we did to improve that, we did a lot of tree trimming, because believe it or not, tree limbs, tree branches, down trees are some of our biggest problems. During the March storm, I believe there were like 800 and something trees that came down that we had to repair. You have to get those out of the way before you can do any restoration. So trees are becoming a big concern to us. We recently met with the BPU, and we have a Reliability Plus program that we're trying to implement. We're trying to expand the right-of-way, which is an area between the trees and our wiring. Right now, the right-of-way is 15 feet. We're trying to expand that to 20 to 25 feet. We're also looking to be able to cut further above wiring. So for instance, if a wire is 40 feet up on a pole and the tree is 80 or 90 feet high, we can trim above that area so rims do not come down on top of the wiring. That is all waiting on BPU approval, and it's also with the compliance group and also the public advocate for the state of New Jersey. We're hoping, we presented that in a public forum in both Central and in Morristown in December. So we're hoping to have some type of ruling on that late January, middle of February. And once that happens, we're looking to implement a 4-year program. We're going to work on certain sections every 6 months. So for instance, let's take the Chambers Brook substation. We may do work on that in the fall of 2021. We may be doing other work different, maybe the Somerset one we may work in the fall of 2019. It's all how we're working on that. We're trying to implement things called the trip saver, which kind of will, instead of when a tree limb hits a wire, it runs down the wire, finds a fuse and blows the fuse out. that will not be repaired until the lineman goes out there and physically puts a new fuse in there. With these new things called trip sabers, it'll set the thing back in motion, and you'll be able to get the wires or the electric to stay on without having the service guy have to get out there right away. So there are some other new technologies we're looking at doing. We're looking to update our security as well in our substations. There's a lot of concerns about that. And, you know, as a whole, we've tried to really repair our public image after Sandy, as most of you have known. After Sandy, I believe the state of New Jersey gave us 90 mandates to meet. After, I think, 3 years, they realized that I think we met 89 of those mandates. So we're here to serve our public. I don't know who the point person will be, but if you guys have any questions, concerns, I did give cards out to Judith for our 24/7 website that you can report an outage at any time. You can get updates on specific areas and towns as well. So you could, if you don't mind handing those out to your public and, you know, just letting them know anytime there is an outage, it needs to be reported. We don't necessarily know something's out unless it's reported. Other than that, I really don't have much to add. I appreciate you taking the time to have me come tonight, and if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Tom, first of all, thanks again for coming out. So just so everyone knows, I emailed over the weekend. There were a couple of ACP&L, a couple of elected officials and mayor conference calls about the outages and the response to the storm, which had a name.
Right.
Harper.
I'm with the company 11 years now. I originally worked in New York for Merrill Lynch. When things kind of got hairy, I ended up here. But I really truly believe we used to be a reactive, proactive company, and now we've become very proactive. You know, and our foresters, Rob Walton, who used to do this job, is now the manager of that group. They're fantastic. If we report something, those guys are usually out the next day or two to do an inspection.
So so I guess I have two questions. So one is, just to confirm, so the outage that we experienced in Bedminster was not related to any of the historic outages, or the reason that we used to get those periodic outages up in the hills?
No, we did a lot of trimming of the circuits. We also moved a lot of customers from the PPAC sub onto the Change Brook sub to make sure that, you know, we put it on a more reliable circuit. Also, we do have a lot of programs. We have the yearly semi-program, which gives us, we roll a 12-month cycle, where if a customer gets 8 to 10 outages in that time period, they automatically, an engineer goes out and looks at that. We also have what we call worst performing circuits, which on a yearly basis, that becomes a priority. We do as much upgrading of whatever needs to be done with that circuit. When we use the word worst, it sounds like it's terrible, but it may be out of power 91%. It may be in 91% and out 9%, or in 98% and out 2%. It could be one of our worst performing circuits. But our engineering group and our reliability guys will go out, walk the circuit, physically walk the circuit, look at all the equipment, and make any changes that are necessary. Also, we do a 4-year trimming cycle that is mandated by the BPU. So that's all, you know, that's all set and scheduled by substation. And last but not least, we also do, Osmos is a contractor of ours that goes out, and we are mandated to do pole inspections every 10 years. You can tell if you ever see a pole, if you're ever interested, there's a little probably half moon type or small football-like label with the year on there that its last was inspected.
Is there anything that we can do from the township side? I know in prior meetings with Rob Walton, we talked about promoting tree cutting and having property owners work with the JCP&L reps when they show up. Is there anything else that is there anything else that we can do, or we can talk to our residents?
I mean, let your customers know we are here to support. You're allowed to call it, any kind of concern. Like, how that you see that commercial for New York Subways, and you see something, say something. We ask the customers to do the same thing. If they see a tree, a tree limb that's hanging or cracked, or they see a pole that's leaning, call it in. We have guys that can go out and look at that. And, we're here to support you guys and your public, or your, constituents any way we can. And it's funny you mentioned about the tree thing, because I was with the mayor of Morris Township. I met them last Thursday, and they were talking about, they have residents that want us to come out and cut trees. And necessarily, if the tree is really not near our equipment, we're really not going to cut it. And there's so much opposition out there for tree trimming and excessive tree trimming that unless something's really a hazard or the tree is dying, we do anything we can to prevent from cutting that tree.
So, thank you for coming out.
Yeah, absolutely, thank
you. Dealing with Mother Nature is not always an exact science, so I would just say the one thing I think you should know that you're doing well and that we'd like to see happen is the conference call in advance of the storm, sort of give us the latest and greatest of what you're expecting so that we can relay that on to our constituents. I think that's key.
This past storm, I'm sure Mayor Jacobs knows that we did provide a conference number or a call-in number for mayors. Obviously, they'll call and say, who's this? They get your name, I believe. I think on Saturday we had 40 mayors on the call. And at that time, later in the call, there is a question and answer session. Our president, Jim Fakolt, was on both of those calls. And, we're here to serve the public. We're here to, to let people know we're their backbone.
Well, the reason I'm pointing to Dawn is that Dawn is president of the Hills Village Master Association. Dawn, any issues from the Hills Village?
No, and I had power, I had no issues.
That's interesting.
It's very
That's the way the
That's
circuits.
very important, Dawn.
That's the way the circuits feed.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's funny. One of my coworkers, her name is Christine Brown. She lives in the Hills. So when you had emailed me, I called her up yesterday because I know she lives there. And I said, yeah, Christine, do you remember any, outages this past weekend? Can you? She looks at me and she goes, Tom, what do I do? I said, well, you work for me. She said, I was here just like you were. I know I was out of power. So yeah, and we, in tougher times or when we have major events, we usually work anywhere from a 12 to a 16-hour shift. So usually in a major event, we do 16 on, 8 off. That's a mandatory thing, and we obviously bring in crews from outside all over. I was stationed in Dover, which is in Morris County. We had crews there from Florida Power and Light, and we had actual planners, and planners are people that run the work and tell the crews where to go. That actually flew up, I think, Saturday morning, and we're flying home Sunday afternoon. So, we after our last couple of big misses, we really spare no expense to make sure we are covered.
Thank you, Tom. And I think, just as, Doug had mentioned that periodically we've heard comments about, oh, they're coming in, they're cutting too many trees. But after some of the last outages, I think some of that sentiment has changed. And
yeah, it's a fine
folks
line.
are more welcoming of the tree cutting than they may have a few years ago.
When we had our BPU meeting in Morristown, I think there were 6 people. We had 19 speak for us or on our behalf, and we had 6 people that spoke against us, 4 of which were from the Chatham Borough. And we had come through there earlier in the summer and had really done some major tree trimming. And that was their biggest concern.
Right.
And they wanted us to put everything underground, which is an enormous expense.
Tom, quick question. By the way,
Sure.
thank you for giving us a very detailed status
No,
update. It's
I'm
appreciated.
Very happy to be here.
No, thank you. Just a question on the pins themselves. Is that an item where it's kind of just a one-off and never really happens, or is that something that you routinely
It
inspect?
happens every now and then.
Okay, so it's not, so it's,
I mean, there are poles that were set that are out there from 1932. When the guy goes and tests them with a hammer, they don't move. They don't splinter. Things just go, there's no rhyme, there's no reason. I was funny, we're doing something in Summit, and we have to get Verizon to do poles because the transformers are from 1913. So we have to put new transformers in, but we have to set bigger poles to fit the transformers in there. But I mean, some of the equipment, you look at a transformer, it's rusted on the outside. Those things hum and they work like you wouldn't believe. And after a while, you'll see a little leak here and there of oil. Half these don't even leak. It's amazing.
got it. But it sounds like, to your point, they're routinely inspected every so often?
Everything is routine, yes. Yes. And we have an independent contractor who does that. Company's name is Osmose.
Okay.
OSMOSE. Yes.
Thanks for your area now.
Yeah. That's very possible.
Really?
And you'll see guys with hammers banging against the bowl. They do a lot of different visual things. They look up at the equipment, and anything they send us back, we definitely repair.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Tom?
Thank you.
Any from the
you,
audience?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
Thank you
Tom.
for coming out tonight.
Enjoy. Let's have a nice, easy winter.
Yes.
Weather-wise. Would be very
Halfway there
nice.
now.
Thank you again.
Halfway there.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Next, approval of the minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to go through the minutes? Any comments? No comments? Can we have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, permits and raffles. We have a few of them. Let me quickly run through them. First permit raffle is Bedminster Township School PTO. Raffle held on April 26, 2019 at Lamington Farm Golf Club, Trump National Golf Club. That's an off-premise 50/50. Next is Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company. Raffle to be held on July 27, 2019 at Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company. Once again, that's an off-premise 50/50. The Women's Club of Tewksbury Township, raffle held on May 17, 2019 at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club, off-premise 50/50. The Women's Club of Tewksbury Township, raffle held on May 17, 2019 at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club, a non-draw prize wheel. Women's Club of Tewksbury Township, raffle to be held May 17, 2019 at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club, Casino Night. The Westmont Montessori School, raffle held on April 13, 2019 at Hamilton Farm Golf Club, off-premise 50/50. And the last one is Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company, raffle held on July 27, 2019 at Pottersville Volunteer Fire Company. That's an off-premise merchandise. Any concerns, comments, questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Twice each night, as is our custom here in Bedminster. We open that microphone up for public comments for issues that are not otherwise on the agenda. If there's anyone who wants to come up, give their, as your opportunity. There will be a second opportunity towards the end of the meeting. Seeing none, we will move to monthly report discussions by committee chair, and we will start, as we usually do, off to the right.
Thank you, Mayor. Sounds nice, right?
Wow.
Good evening, everybody. I haven't had any formal meetings, but I have had some sit-downs with John and Colin and I on some DPW personnel issues, paving management plan issues. So that's all moving along smoothly. Nothing solidified yet in terms of decisions, but we know what we need to do there. I don't know if some of that's for exec or not, but we're working through those issues and, trying to fill the one spot that was recently vacated by Mr. Murray. So we've got some decisions there, but I think John's got a good beat on where he wants to be. I also had a discussion with Colin and Robin Ray and John about some of the facilities in town through rec. A lot of our parks need some TLC. We've got some broken benches, some tables that are warping, stuff that just looks old and dingy. We got to put a couple bucks into our parks, and of course the question is, open space and how much, if any, of that do we want to use. But I think that's a discussion for budget session, and we told Robin certainly to swing by to sort of brief everybody on that, but that's in the works as well to come. I don't believe, I'm working with Stacy on our personnel policy, trying to get that up and running, and the HR function that we've been kicking around had very productive last couple weeks. We've got, and I think Stacy will present that later, we've got sort of an ad that we're looking to post for that spot, but we'll just continue to do that, and that's sort of the first shoe that has to drop before we can actually dig into our personnel policy a little bit. We want to get somebody that's going to be the czar of HR, if you will.
Right.
But those are the things we're working on. Hopefully we've got some meetings coming up between the next meeting and now, but that's what we've got cooking.
Thank you, Doug. Colin?
Mayor, thank you. Good evening. We had our quarterly rec meeting last Tuesday. As Doug had mentioned, we discussed a lot of the facilities in town, particularly Pluckman Schoolhouse Park, which is in need of resurfacing and some other potential improvements. And as Doug referenced, we had a meeting between DPW and Rec to discuss that in preparation for our budget meetings. Youth basketball registrations up 134 to 157 last year. So that's a one-year difference. It's the highest in 10 years. Robin Ray, Rec Director, attributed a lot of that success to the Saturday morning clinics, which are generating a lot of enthusiasm. We're seeing registration for girls, particularly those in grades 2 to 4, and in the 5 and 6 rec league. So well done there. Just FYI, Rec is also sponsoring a bus trip to the Philadelphia Flower Show on Wednesday, March 6th.
The Flyers or the Flowers?
The Flowers, not the Flyers. Sorry, Don. You're not as exciting for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man.
The bus leaves Miller Lane Park at 9 a.m. and returns around 5:45. Tickets are $60 a person. You can register in person or go online, but you have to register by this Friday. Board of Health, we had 2 applications that were reviewed and approved last Thursday. I want to let folks know that the Board of Health will be implementing a letter grading system for the area restaurants. They've been working on that for over a year. Those grades will be prominently displayed in the restaurant and should give our residents a little better information around the health and sanitary conditions of those places. We're also exploring the option of having that information available via the web. EC, very quickly, Flint Hill Preserve dropped off a large package this afternoon to Ms. Sullivan. These are the final copies of their DEP application, which they have made through NRCS. They've asked us to review and approve as one of the property owners. They also need to make sure that their plan is consistent with the conservation easement that they previously identified. So I'll share a copy with Mr. Bellardo. I will share a copy with Tim Walter, who is now chairman at EC. We'll review it and then get back to them with comments, questions, issues, whatever.
Probably also should get Paul Ferrero on board.
Will do.
And what's the timing of the urgency of that submission? So do they need a quick turnaround from the town?
It is within 90 days they need an answer definitively. Okay. We should probably endeavor to do that more quickly than that, but it's not a tomorrow thing. So we'll get on it and supply any comments and questions that we may have. And to Mr. Bellardo's question, I'll get over a copy to Paul. And then just one last thing, we had a library meeting last week, and I know the mayor will talk more about this, but the Betty Merck Reading Room was dedicated on Sunday, January 13th. It's now open to the public. If you haven't seen it, it's a pretty awesome addition. So please go visit. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Mayor.
Stacy.
Thank you. As Doug stated, we've been working on the personnel policy. We've had some phone conferences and conversations with regard to, possibly a consultant position for HR. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But that's really it. I haven't had any formal meetings since we last met. So welcome, congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you.
And congratulations, Renee.
Speaking of Renee, Committeewoman Mareski, you ready for your first
No.
chair report?
No, because I had 2 meetings on the same night. This is a heck of a way to get sworn in.
Called baptism.
And it was absolutely lovely. I'm the liaison to the Jacobus Van de Veer House Committee, and they start with a dinner, which was very lovely. I got to talk to some people first, but I didn't get a lot of time to spend talking about the house. They did, however, start to discuss the Summers County Historic Preservation Grant that they have. And they did take a vote to move ahead. They have to start to spend that money within 2 years, and it sounds like they already have plans that they're going to be up and running with soon. They need to get some bids on some contracts, but they're all excited about that. So that sounds good. I'll be catching up with Craig Sutherland about other projects in the coming weeks.
Just while we're on the JVH and the barn addition, I guess this is a question for John. Does the existing agreement between the township and JVH, does that need to be revised to accommodate the construction of the barn?
I don't think I've looked at that agreement, Mayor, in years, so I would have to look at the agreement or agreements and look at what's proposed. Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
I hear yeses.
I hear,
So-
I can't do that, so.
Okay.
I need to look at the
There
agreement.
was a question on their agenda about
Okay.
that item. So either they were going to be reached out, or we should reach out to them about that.
Okay, so we originally, I think it was last year or maybe the year before that, they sort of gave us the layout of where the barn would be located. So if you could just get that over to John,
We'll get that over.
and then for the next meeting, certainly JVH will be working on their schedule with whatever they need to do to move forward on the barn, but at the same time, we should anticipate any revisions that would need to be done to the lease or any other agreements
And I
between
seem to
us.
recall there was a lease and some amendments that had been done.
You did it once before. I
So
still have it.
I should look at all of them.
Okay.
And just on that score, we should expect for budget session, since we're in it, budget season, JVH to be showing up to, again, advise us the need for certain repairs and painting and that sort of thing, because they're looking for the township to pay the bill on that one because it's under the lease.
Well, that is a good point to look at the lease, and if there's going to be revisions, let's be circumspect in how we review it and how we move forward. All right.
Second meeting was coming up at the very end of the Environmental Commission with Tim Walter now as head. I had a couple new members, and everybody sounded pretty excited to be there. So we're reviewing some old programs, going over some new ideas, and that was pretty much it. There was nothing in particular decided about anything, but sounds like it's going to be an exciting commission.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Renee. So as Colin mentioned, I've been dropping in on some of the different boards, and I'll be certainly hitting them all shortly. As you remember, during the reorg, I talked about one of the things that we want to do was to increase the activation and the participation of the boards and commissions. And, I can just do a quick summary of where we stand on those issues to date. Historic preservation has already made outreach to both the school and the library, and they've actually got about 2 or 3 different programs that they'd like to run either in conjunction or at the school or the library. So on local history, state history, and there's a number of topics that they're looking to present. So more to be developed as that continues. Board of Health gave the same direction to the Board of Health, and Colin was there, and we talked about what can we do with the Board of Health rather than looking at septic systems and coming up with this. How do we make it more active? And we were just lucky that we had a county rep in attendance, and we talked about, are there any programs that the Board of Health can sponsor that are ready to go? We've got the doctors, we've got Bernie Davis and Al Fisher up here with, they have some subject matter expertise on the board, and they're going to contemplate it. But the county said, we already have programs. Healthy Town, the Mayor Wellness Center, flu clinics, which I believe historically we actually have done. So there's a list. The county is going to coordinate with us, and we'll put that under the auspices of the Board of Health to continue. Also, one of the issues that we discussed with the Board of Health was, as they move forward to the letter grading, one of the requirements to have the letter or the inspection reports put up on the doors, how about on our website? So I think that's something that the Board of Health will look at perhaps at the next meeting and talk about posting those inspection reports, or at least the letter grades, on the website. Colin also came up with a great idea, and Judy said the same thing, so we both get great credit for perhaps linking to the county, which is not quite there, but the county would be able to give us information not just on Bedminster food establishments and restaurants, but all the other towns that the county does inspections for. So they don't do all inspections for the entire county. There's some that do their own, but only those that are handled by the county, we could have that information and make it more useful to our residents. Ag Advisory meeting with Farmers Market next week. There are already some emails going back and forth, so there seems to be some robust discussion on farmland preservation and moving forward with the Farmers Market for 2019. Colin also mentioned the library. So we were all lucky to be in attendance. Well, I guess Colin and I were lucky to be in attendance for the opening of the Betty Merck Reading Room, which just looks great. It's one of the last missions that Sandy Putnam was really pushing through as library director. So he coordinated with the Friends, who provided really a tremendous amount of the funding. The Merck family, Laddie Merck, was in attendance in his mother's honor for the reading room. And it is, so those familiar with the library, we've got the cafe. The cafe is busy, there's a lot of activity going on. The reading room is to be the quiet place. They sacrificed two aisles of books because, as Sandy was observing, books are becoming less critical for libraries. So people are coming there with their laptops, they're coming there to do work, and the reading room provides an opportunity for that quiet space where folks can come in and do work. They can do it in the cafe, but there's some noise there. But the reading room is that opportunity, and it's a beautiful room, and I encourage you all to get there. We had a little bit of snow and ice. John, great job for DPW. Saw you guys out there over the night, and in the morning, the Bedminster roads looked great. They really did. So once again, Bedminster, our roads seem to be in much better shape than a lot of our surrounding towns. And with that, Judy, can we have the administrator's report?
A couple things. I'll expand a little bit, talking about the Betty Merck Reading Room. Last Tuesday, the Bedminster Charities had their final meeting to kind of finalize the 2018 cycle that they had, and we were invited to have it at the Clarence Dillon Library. They hosted the meeting, and we got to see the Betty Merck Reading Room. It is fabulous. We didn't have Fall Fest this year because we had a very bad storm that day. We canceled it for safety reasons. John Mann, Carl Rock, myself, some of the representatives from the group got together, had to cancel the event. Very sad. But the executive committee, which is formed of a member from each of the 7 charities and along with the 4 board members, got together, put our heads together, came up with an online auction of all the donations that we had picked up that we were going to have available at the event. All our corporate sponsors were contacted and asked if we could keep their donation. Everyone said yes. We reached out to all our participants, all our vendors and food trucks, and asked them if they wanted to either A, get a refund, or could we keep their deposit and put part of it towards next year and put part of it towards our fund drive. Most of them said yes. They've been to the event many years. So we were very pleased. We were able to hand out $4,200 checks to each of the 7 charities without even holding an event this year. So $4,200 to each of the charities. So that was last Tuesday's meeting. It was really pretty good for having no event. Budget work sessions. Our first one is scheduled for next Monday. Traditionally, we have them on the Mondays between our regular meetings. So the first one will be January 28th, and we'll have, that'll just be a kickoff meeting. February 11th, we will have the tax assessor come in and give us a review of where we're headed this year with assessments and discussing capital budgets. February 25th, I would like to invite the emergency services, the 2 fire companies, to come in and talk about what their needs are, and maybe we would have Jacobus Vanderveer and recreation there as well. We'll see, maybe we have them in a meeting before, we'll see what's going to work. And March 11th, traditionally we're supposed to introduce our budget by the week of March 18th. We do have a meeting that Monday, the 18th. So that is the goal, to introduce on March 18th. And this year we are every 3 years we have a full review by the state. This is our year. So they watch everything we do. We have to show all our work. So I'd like to be on time to see if we can. So that's the proposal for meetings. They have been noticed already. We can add additional if we need to, but they would probably need, keep on the time frames, be on a Saturday morning. I know it's not fun. Yeah, we could. Lastly, on January 3rd, there was a state police motor vehicle stop out on 287, 287 South. It turned out to be a stolen car. The driver sped off. When the trooper went up to talk to the driver sped off, got off on exit 22 on the 202-206 North, but didn't make it that far. Going pretty fast, didn't make the turn on the ramp and hit our hike and bike bridge. Did he go airborne, Chief?
I don't believe so.
No. So we have closed the hike and bike trail for that reason, at least from Robertson Drive up to the jug handle. I'm going to turn it over to John and the Chief because they've been working together as far as what the repairs are, but they can. We do have a $2,500 deductible with our insurance. It is insured, but because it was a stolen car, normally we would go after the driver. Well, with a stolen car, that's not possible.
So as of right now, Paul Farrar reached out to a contractor to get a price to fix the, it's not broken, it's a bent piece of the structure. That's around $8,600. And including that, I asked Paul to give us some price on what the engineering cost is for his time, what it would cost for DOT permits, since it is DOT property, any kind of traffic control, which would be either local police if they want, or they're going to have state police, and any permit fees in that. So he did put something together and gave it to me. I did forward all that information off to our representative handling the claim at this point in time. The information I'm getting back from them is that they're not going to pay for certain things out of the engineering. It's just basically what they do. The repair should be okay. We do have a $10,000 point to which we can just go ahead and do the work. Other than that, after $10,000, if the claim is over $10,000, it has to go in front of the JIF committee for approval, which I would assume is not going to be much more. So the total outlay of everything we have right now is around $14,000. With our deductible, should bring it down to about $2,500 or $12,000 at this point in time to get the thing done. So it's really Paul's time at this point to get this thing moving. I'm going to have him proceed as much as we can, have the contractor get in, at least online, but he needs to get information to the GOT for shoulder closings and things like that. He needs to get a plan together for them so that they can approve it. It's a very odd situation because the accident, though occurred off of 287, The property that ended up on is DOT property. The bridge that we have for a hike and bike belongs to the township. We have an easement with DOT, so it's kind of a convoluted situation at this point in time. So we're working through it at this point.
The current condition of the bridge doesn't pose any imminent threat to the 287 ramp.
It does not. No.
During the repair, you mentioned shoulder closing, will that actually force the closing of the ramp itself?
I don't believe so. I think what's going to happen is they're going to bring in a crane, support the piece where it needs to come out, take the piece out, repair it, put it back in place, and then we should be good.
And they can do that all from the side, so they don't have to close the ramp?
Everything off the side. They haven't talked to the contractor, but that's my assumption at this point in time. There was notice in his proposal that damage to landscaping lawn, things like that is not responsibility of him at this point in time. So I'm assuming it's not off of the shoulder, but I'm not sure if the DOT is going to require some kind of lane closure in that area just because of the way the road is at this point in time. So that's why Paul needs to do that work. There is a quote in Paul's estimate of $600 to hand deliver the document to DOT and kind of get an approval at that point. He's trying to give me an approval so we can get this thing moving. That's one of those items that the adjuster said we're not paying for that. So I think we're going to eat this cost, but I know the residents have been going through the blockages as much as possible. We've been putting them back up as much as we can, so trying to get it done.
Chief, where are we with the investigation? Is that state, or are we doing
Yeah,
it?
we're not. Being the fact that it's an interstate highway, the state police are responsible for anything exiting that roadway. So once that vehicle came off, it's their investigation.
Do we have a sense that it's on their radar?
But my understanding is it's still an open investigation, trying to, identify and apprehend the actual driver of the vehicle, but I don't know where they stand.
And do we provide traffic control on the day of the construction?
It depends on what DOT requires. A lot of the time, they will require that the state police handle their own stuff, but they could, ask our patrol to do it also. It's required.
Thank you, John. Hopefully we get that. Well, speaking of that, weather delays, that's something that can proceed in cold weather. That's not going to hamper.
I think I'd rather prefer it, and I think so that they can get equipment in and out of there, because they're talking about a crane plus a high lift to forklift it just to try to get that thing in and out of there. So I'm hoping that the cold weather holds and we can get this thing underway. So I'd rather him just go in there and just do it without DOT approval, but ask forgiveness later. I don't know. Does that work? Got a bunch of attorneys sitting up there.
Size of angels.
Judy, is that it for the
That's
administrator's
it.
report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to discussion on introduced ordinances. We have none. Introduction of ordinances, we have none. Public hearing of ordinances, we have none. Consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda. Unless there's any questions or comments, or someone wants to pull that off the consent agenda, may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved?
Second. This requires a roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
There are no resolutions. Moving on to the bill list, may we have a motion to approve the bill list pending individual review of invoices?
So moved.
Second.
Again, roll call vote. Mr.
Oh.
Stevenson?
Well, actually, I'm going to abstain because I think I'm on the list. So I can't move it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are. Sorry. Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
You're
You're going to...
You're
You're
moving.
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Your motion,
Yeah.
okay. So, Mr. Stevenson is abstaining?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion items. Any issues for the Township Committee to put on discussion?
I think we're good.
Okay. New business. Chief Draheim is here. Chief, come on up.
Yeah, okay. So this is the same letter you have already, it's just a little bit better copy. And it goes with, you'll have a couple of spreadsheets with capital numbers on them that you have that you might want to reference while you're looking at this request.
Thank you, Judy.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. I want to first formally introduce myself to all of you. I believe you've all seen me around. My name is Matt Draheim. I took over January 1 as the fire chief for the Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department. So I look forward to
Congratulations.
working with you all in the next couple of years. So the letter you have in front of you is just a request, formal request to allocate the remaining funds for the order of the purchase of new turnout gear for firefighters. Back in 2018 budget, this council approved 10 sets of new fire gear to replace the remainder of the fire gear that we currently have that was set to expire at the end of 2018. So we have, through last year, we went through a series of vendors to determine what was ultimately going to be the best fit for us as the Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department in terms of fire gear moving forward. And with that, we met with 3 companies, tried two different companies to determine what we liked better, and we ultimately ended up deciding going with Lion Apparel. Lion Apparel is a company that is on the state Treasury approved vendor list, but they're also one of the largest turnout gear companies in the United States. They provide turnout gear to 8 of the 10 major metropolitan cities within the country. The 2 of those that don't follow that are New York City and LA Fire. They're so large that they basically have their own sets of gear that made for them. But with that, that'll bring Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department into current compliance with National Fire Protection Agency's, I can't say mandate, but recommendation that that turnout gear be replaced every 10 years. So with that, we'll be set for a minimum of another 5 years before we would need to purchase new gear at this time. So again, like the letter states, this is just introducing it to you as the council for 2019, but requesting it be put through for last year's capital.
Great. So the 4 of us may remember, but this is new for Renee. So last year in the 2018 budget, we had approved $24,000 for turnout gear, and the $24,000 would represent the Bedminster contribution, with the remaining 20%, which is 80% of the operation for Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department. The other 20% would come from the Borough of Far Hills. So this is money that we had already allocated and approved in the 2018 budget. This is essentially now, the money was set aside last year, and now the request is to come in and spend it.
So if I could just elaborate a little bit.
Right.
So at the money set aside last year, that was approved in the budget last year for the $24,000, as the mayor stated, portion of that comes from Far Hills. The $24,000 is Bedminster's portion. You'll see his number is slightly higher than that. That remaining portion will come from Far Hills. The money in the 2018 column on this spreadsheet was never it was approved, it was never appropriated into a capital ordinance. So the money is sitting in a capital pot of money, and it could be approved for any purchase. We have it earmarked for emergency services, okay? So with your agreement tonight, we can either leave that sit there in the pot, and discuss it further when we get into budget sessions as to, is that enough money, or they're going to be coming forward with maybe some other requests. We still have remaining in 2017 money, let's see on a sheet, about $52,000. Okay, that has already been appropriated, sitting in a ordinance ready to go, but the two fire companies were directed, when you have a major purchase, we'd like you to come before us, as Matt's doing, or as Chief is doing tonight, tell us what it is you really want to purchase, and we'd like to talk about it. So that's what he's doing, but we do have $52,000 set aside for Bedminster's portion of purchase already to go.
So Chief, what's the timing of the purchase?
So if we were to use next Monday as a primer, if the order was to go in next Monday, they're telling us it's about 90 days from the time of placing of order to actual putting on the gear and getting on a fire truck to respond. So a little around 3 months. With our last set, it was right around that 3-month period in order to get the gear in, because it is all custom tailored to the fire department, or to the individual firefighter, and then it has to go through the manufacture process. It's not like something that you just go get off the shelf. These are all custom made with specs that we've worked with our representatives from the company that are going to best fit our needs as a fire department.
Have you already had the discussions with Far Hills for their
We have
portion?
not. We're coming to Bedminster first.
Yeah, they were copied on this letter,
CC.
and, yeah, they were copied, and I also spoke with the CFO from Far Hills, and they also have funding available for their portion.
I just have a quick question about the invoice. So Whitmer Public Safety is probably the company that sells Lion Apparel?
Correct. That is the company. Yeah. They're actually a conglomerate company of the ones that you see down the bottom of the PO.
Right.
The company that we deal with is the Fire Store. But they also do EMS and police and all those other fun things.
Chief, if I may,
Yes.
could you just give us a little bit of flavor for why it is you are looking at the Lion?
Sure.
Equipment as opposed to the other, and then if you
Abs-
could just touch upon price difference between the two.
Sure. I can start with the price difference. The prices were identical. So the two main sets of gear that we looked at were the Lion gear, and we looked at a company called Globe. They're actually the manufacturer that we had for our previous gear prior to this allocation of 10 sets last year and 10 sets for this year. The reason we chose the Lion gear, it's a little bit more flexible in terms of movement. So one of our big components that we looked at when we were initially looking at the gear was we don't fight fires. It's a good problem for us as a township to have. We don't have many fires within the township. So primarily what we're doing is we're doing service calls, we're doing car accidents. So we wanted to have gear that moved, was breathable, and wasn't something that was going to weigh us down on our everyday operations. So this gear has flexibility to it. It's built like athletic gear, so it's got like the cuts in different spots so that it has flexibility and movement. Another reason we chose this company in particular is they have, I wouldn't say proprietary, but they have a coating that they put over their external portion of the gear that's like a water repellent feature to the gear. And that also helps with drying on the outset. So when you're out in the rain, you don't really get wet, but if you do get wet, it dries really quick. And that was another thing that was important to us, was that when it got wet, it was able to go back into service quickly. So just a little factoid on that. The gear that we're getting versus the Globe gear, when soaking wet, our gear that we're proposing to purchase is 8 pounds lighter than the gear that we currently have. So substantial difference if you were to get wet in a fire or outside in the rain. So that was another of the main reasons why we went with that. And quite frankly, the Globe gear, just the manufacturing or the the attention to detail in the manufacturing had kind of sort of gone downhill since the last time we had purchased gear from them. We had noticed already in the first couple months of just wearing it that, you know, we were getting some frays in some of the stitching and things like that. Nothing catastrophic, but, you know, it was just workmanship and craftsmanship.
And then, thank you for that. From soup to nuts, is the gear that we're talking about cover the entire firefight?
It does. So what the quote shows is for a turnout jacket, turnout pants, a new helmet, and new boots, gloves, and all those other ancillary items. They're replaced less often than the items on this list. Those are the main items that we replace generally every 10 years, unless they're worn out because of excessive use.
And Chief, just to understand, the ask for tonight is about 26,000, right? That's 80% of your 32?
Roughly, yes. Yeah.
460, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and the reason's a little bit more price increase from last year to this year, but yeah, it's not substantial. That's across the board with everything. We've seen a price increase.
And if you remember, they had a previous ordinance they were using for some purchases, and they didn't use it all, and they saved it. They were very frugal with their money, and they've already bought 10 sets with the money they saved, so.
Right.
Now, just going through our last year's, well, the capital plan. So in 2021, there's anticipated $30,800. So there's more turnout gear 2 years out.
That at this time that would come off of the list. I think at the time when this 2017 to 2022 plan was put into place, I can't speak for predecessors, but I think what they were anticipating was an influx of new members where we would have to purchase new gear because of just not having it. But at this time, we have an excess of gear. Once we get these 10 sets of gear, we will have gear that we can outfit a new firefighter who has yet to become a firefighter, who hasn't gone through all those classes yet. That's what we can use the expired gear for, is for somebody who doesn't actively go into what we call the hot zone, and that's any place that the firefighter has the potential to get injured.
Right now, as we're talking, if there was, God forbid, an event tonight that required you to be there, how many folks are on staff that would be eligible to go into the hot zone, as you say?
My last check, we have probably 25 to 30 active firefighters who can get on a fire truck and respond if there were an emergency at this time.
Okay, and the 10 that you're looking for now is...
That's included. That's included in there. We are currently operating with 10 firefighters not in compliant gear.
But I'm saying the 10 would put you up, everybody's got it then?
It would put us to everybody has a set of compliant fire gear, yeah, within that 10-year limit. I believe the last set that was ordered was 2020 or 2014, which would put us at 2024, okay. At which they would have to be replaced.
And how many sets would that be in? Roughly, I mean, it's...
Roughly probably be around that 10 number,
10 number
again.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Okay, the only other question I guess I would have is the compatibility. So the breathe packs, everything else, it's all compatible with whatever vendor you go with. And then also ask the question about, does this dictate your packs? And then
this does not, no.
To match over to Potter's.
Yeah, this is completely separate and independent. I mean, it's like a jersey. You know, it's whoever, you know, you like Nike, you like Reebok. You know, it's really, that's what that, you know, the gear is to us. But the air packs are something that we're going to be looking in the next, I believe next year, to replace those, and at which time we're going to begin having conversations with Pottersville to determine whether or not they need replacement and how we can work with them to get something that will go across departments. Yes. But currently the air packs we have are universal, even though they are manufactured by two different manufacturers. They have universal connections on them. That's required per National Fire Protection Agency. So if there were an issue, we would have the ability to interface with Pottersville's air packs.
Great. So Judy, what's the ask?
So with your approval, I work with Matt, our purchasing agent, our CFO, to, I understand that the equipment is already state contract, so we don't have to do bids or
Don't
anything like that.
have to go
It's
through
already
QPA.
ready to go. So we could, put an order together fairly quickly with your approval. I reached out to Far Hills, we would do it together.
So is that a verbal approval or is this a resolution, since we're allocating funds?
Um,
We're allocating funds that have already been appropriated.
The ordinance has already been done, and it's a general ordinance that says the equipment and, stuff like this, it's already written in there. We're not specific, so you already have the approval has been given, but you would ask, don't just go out and spend it, we want to hear it, what you're buying, so that's why the chief is here.
Okay, so we're not doing a resolution, this is just a poll to make sure that we're all on board and then we're all okay with the expenditure.
So, I mean, look, this is essential stuff for folks that we usually don't think about until, oh my gosh, we have a horrible thing, and here they come and they save the day. I think, we have an obligation to make sure these folks are going in, and volunteers are safe and secure, and I think it makes all the sense in the world. We've got the money. I would certainly vote in favor of it.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
say, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
so much.
Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
And when
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
when the gear comes in, I'll be sure to bring somebody who got it up with me, and we can talk to you guys.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
We need a calendar.
Oh, we don't have any firefighters that look like that.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Renee, you win.
You'll have to settle for a ride on the bucket truck.
Make some money for town.
I love it.
That's Pottersville.
Okay.
Old business. Let's move item C to the beginning, because our resident has been very patient. So this is, let's come back to Tuttle Avenue and the right-of-way or non-right-of-way. Ms. Panasic, if you can come up. And John, just want to give us an update of your title review?
Yes, Mayor, we did get a preliminary title review back in December. It was this committee's desire to get a more definitive opinion from the title agency, Linda Burkhoff. I asked her to go ahead and do that. As you're all aware, it was a rather lengthy puzzle to put together, hence the time that it took for the agency. I did get a report from Ms. Burkhoff yesterday. I've looked through it. It seemingly indicates that although the township never did an ordinance or formal mechanism to accept that portion of Bedminster Terrace on the tax map that is to the east of Tuttle, that based upon her search to actions taken by the Pantley and Laytons dating as far back as 1917, that the township has a right to assert ownership over that particular portion on the tax map.
So that stub of Bedminster Terrace is owned, not just a right-of-way, but it is municipal property.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, so for the homeowner, what does that mean for us?
Well, you've never maintained the road. It's obviously your decision whether to permit the homeowner to construct a driveway in a road, albeit some might call it a paper road, because it's never been improved.
Is there a distinction between paper road, unimproved road, and an improved road?
Yes, a paper road you'll often see on tax maps is a reservation for future use where there has actually been no physical disturbance of the ground. And you can see, particularly in townships like Bedminster and some of our neighboring towns, there are paper roads that have no use. At times, municipalities have simply vacated the paper roads and allowed that particular land to revert back to the neighboring property owners. Obviously, a fully improved township road is one that we traditionally know. It's paved, you drive on it. This is a road apparently that by action of the neighboring property owners was given to the township back in 1917. We realized back then that things often weren't done in a formal sense as they are today. Since 1917, townships have often acquired roads by ordinance. Although if you now look at the municipal land use law, that indicates that if the township signs off on a filed plat, for example, a subdivision plat, and it is filed with the county clerk, then by law that's an acceptance, whether there's an ordinance or not. So this road is kind of in the gray area. It is not a paper street because it's somewhat improved. There's been a physical disturbance. On the other hand, the township, to the best of my knowledge, and I've driven by the road a number of times, it certainly would not strike anyone as a township road. The Lynches have constructed what appears to be a gravel driveway on the township portion that apparently has been there for years.
So just if everyone just has a mental image of the stub of Bedminster Terrace, certainly you see that even back in 1917, that it may have been contemplated as access to the Leighton property behind the two properties. So the idea of vacating that doesn't sit right, because then essentially you landlock the Leighton piece.
You have removed the access future or otherwise from the Leighton piece to Tuttle.
So if we're not going to do a road vacation, in that case, so we've got municipal property that is still a paved street or an unimproved street. Lynch is using that as an access way hitting their driveway, although anyone driving by would assume that's Lynch's driveway. And Ms. Panasic is looking to do the same. So to me, it's a matter of how we get the homeowner to the end point. So how do we do that?
Well, certainly if you want to allow the homeowner to construct the driveway, you certainly can do that. I would recommend that you get a hold harmless and indemnification agreement, so that if either the Leightons or the Lynches somehow bring an action against you for permitting that the homeowner has agreed to, an event of that litigation, to indemnify and hold you harmless.
So your recommendation is that we not call it, make it an improved street. If it's an improved street, then the town is responsible for stormwater drainage, paving, maintenance, all that other stuff. What sounds like you guys are ready to do, the Lynches have been doing for some time.
That would be
So
that would be an acknowledgement in part of the hold harmless and indemnification agreement that the property owner, by virtue of what really is an extraordinary gesture, if governing body decides to do this, to allow construction in a municipally owned piece of property, that they would acknowledge that at no time in the future are you going to maintain and improve the road, and that if there are any actions brought against the township, there would be indemnification and hold harmless. That would be something that I would recommend be filed with the county clerk, so that in the future, when none of us are here, and this might arise 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, somebody doing a title search just like we did would realize what happened.
Ms. Panasic, where do you stand in your discussions with the Lynches?
I have the email from the attorney that they agreed to share the driveway. We still have some issue because the way he's using because when I had the house in September, it was showing the paper road. So, and my setbacks are showing that it says I have to be 25 feet away to build something. So now he's using 2/3 of this road he's using, and some part I have to share. I have a map here. Some parts I have to, but he's agreeing and Mr. Layton is agreeing for me to do what I want to do. Basically, I want to put 1/3 of the gravel to make the street look nice, a little bit wider, so we can use and enjoy.
So I just want to be clear that,
Everybody is agreeing. Layton and Lynch are on my side right now. It took me a while to.
yes, it did. And if we agree from the township, we would want the understanding that between you and Layton, you guys, if there's a washout of gravel, you guys are going to fix it. If there's drainage issues, between you and Layton, you'll take care of that.
Then,
I'm sorry,
would
Lynch.
you
I'm
suggest
sorry, right.
that they also, the other property owners, sign the hold harmless as, for everybody it should be equal?
Look, I certainly would suggest it, whether you would be able to get that from the Lynches, I'm not certain.
I think that was your recommendation, is it the recommendation?
Layton, you're not really disturbing, you might even want to get it from Layton, because Layton might say essentially you allow them to
Right.
construct something that might impede us from developing the property in
Right.
the future.
And then it has the bouncing off effect too, because if you don't, for one, and then something happens, and then they say, well, you made me, it kind of has a reverberation effect.
At that time, with the Laytons develop that property, then it goes from, presumably going from a paper street or an improved street to that would be a street.
They would be responsible for that, because under the municipal land use law in section 42, there is a rational nexus to requiring them to make that improvement part of their subdivision. So I'm not aware, by the way, if I looked at the property, I think it might go out to 202, but I'm not aware.
It does, so it goes out by the,
Right.
by the funeral home, and also looking at that survey, it also looks like it touches upon the cul-de-sac.
Right,
and
so
River.
it seems to me, even if somehow this was foreclosed in the future, they would still have access, but on the other hand, their predecessors in title, certainly back in 1917, when they developed the adjoining properties or whatever, they had in mind when they said this is township, that they wanted that as an access point.
John, does an easement work here?
On a township road, I'm not sure that makes any sense, Mr. Stevenson.
Permitting them access over the municipal land?
And you still have the hold harmless kind of.
Essentially what we're saying is more akin to a license agreement.
License, maybe a license.
License, this may be more of a
rather than
license than
easement.
Yeah, I mean, just something.
I think a license is less permanent, so.
And then that contemplates that if Layton gets developed and it goes from being an access point for the driveway, then Bedminster Terrace becomes a road. And you wouldn't want that encumbered by the easement, so there, you would have to.
We've had a
to me,
lot.
the license sounds.
We've had a lot of back and forth, and they said, or they will, or this one said they will. I know we've often found more productive when we got all the stakeholders into, a conference room here. We had a meeting, certainly not on this a couple of weeks ago, but on another area of interest, and we had a Monday morning meeting. It certainly might be productive if we get this property owner, the Lynch property owner, and somebody from the Laytons, we put them all in the room and say, look, we want to help you out. We don't want Lynch's coming back and saying, why did you do that? We don't want Layton's coming back, why did you do that? So we want a tri-part agreement with all three of you so that we have some certainty that everyone's on board.
Who would prepare such an agreement?
I would.
You want to protect the.
Once we had a meeting in the mines and everyone said, right, we all want to solve this and we want to agree to that. Otherwise, we're going to have people going back and forth for months.
Well, you'd also need all those parties together to clear up any title issues. And you get
Yeah.
a sign off on it. And this is
I would
what-
want to get everyone, I think we have a title report, it's certainly public what was received yesterday. You had requested a copy of that. I have no problem sending you a copy of that or making that available to the Lynches or Laytons.
Do you know if what we're discussing, does that pose any difficulties for zoning or construction? I would imagine not, that this is a remedy that solves any issues that Jeff or Ken might have.
Yeah, I think they're mainly concerned with runoff and other things caused by the construction.
I already solved the problem with them. I submitted all the documents, I spoke to Jeff Price today, and on Thursday, the town engineer is gonna see the plan, the grading plan that I presented.
No, that can be done internally with township staff, the legal issues with the committee.
So is the driveway opening onto the unimproved street of Bedminster Terrace, or is the driveway opening onto Tuttle?
I haven't seen the plans that were submitted for the driveway opening. That,
Mr. Terrace.
yeah, I haven't seen those. Paul has not, or Jeff hasn't given those to me, so I haven't looked at those.
See, that's the issue that I have, and I mean, I want to fix the issue.
But I've asked them to hold up that permit till we resolve the legal issues.
Coming in today in 2019 and saying this is how it's going to work, and then in 2028, that latent property gets developed, now they need to use Bedminster Terrace. Now I've got a problem with the Lynches and this homeowner saying, wait a second, you told us we could use this as a as our driveway, and now you're telling us this is a road, where are we going to put our driveway? So I don't think without some sort of license or revocable license, and the parties know going in that this may change if that other plot has been developed.
And that's why I think the license works, because instead of this longer driveway, it may just be a very short driveway, because Bedminster Terrace is going to be coming right through there.
Right. And my only thing would be just notice to the folks that they're going into this eyes wide open. If you're going to be spending their own money doing this, you need to understand that there's a contingency out there that may reverse course on this, and that's the development of that other piece of property.
It is an extraordinary request, and you're to be commended for even considering it, because I've been doing this many, many years. I can't recall where a resident has ever asked to construct a driveway in a township road.
And John, in this case, who owns these improvements? And are there any prohibited improvements?
You know, one might argue that the current driveway that the Lynches constructed was done without our permission. In fact, it most likely was.
Right. But I mean, now, if they go put time and money, the three parties into this...
There's a lot of issues that we would have to sit down and resolve.
Right, I mean, it's going to have to...
This is not
easy.
a black and white request.
Right.
Because I think each party probably has their point where they're like, we're okay, or, so I think it's a great idea to kind of, everybody sit down
Right.
and go over it, including obviously someone.
Right. Obviously, there was an existing driveway to Tuttle.
Right.
The request to come on to Bedminster is something, again, that's unusual.
And plus, back to Doug's point, I mean, the issue becomes 10 years down the road, have the improvements been done in such a way they can't be reversed? And we have to ensure that can't happen.
Well, then, as I said, that's why you would have to have an agreement amongst all three saying, look, this is what the homeowner wants to do, this is what the Lynches have done, be aware, this is a township road, albeit one not improved, and at some point in the future, if the Laytons decide to come through with a development plan or a party that they've sold it to, anything that you've done there may go by the wayside. Now, that being said, a public road would most likely be an improvement. If the developer paved it, both the Lynches and the property owner here would have the ability to simply put their driveways there. Problem solved.
So the submission of a driveway opening permit is on hold until some sort of a hold harmless agreement is...
I would think so, because we have not reached a legal agreement yet with the property owners with respect to the usage of that terrace.
Because we had a conversation today about a driveway opening permit, and was this the right time? So,
Yeah, that's what I got from Mr. Price. He gave me the application. But I presented Mr. Layton's agreement that I can use. Mr. Lynch, I showed you the email.
Ma'am, as the township attorney, there are certain legal ways to do things, and that is not sufficient.
I understand, so we're gonna sit it, three of us, and
If you want to bring counsel, that's certainly fine as well, but there's got to be an agreement between all three parties that are representative of the landowners at stake. I'm not going to authorize this committee to do anything that's going to prejudice the Laytons in the future, especially since they're past deed holders dedicated this for purpose of access, and certainly there have been concerns that the Lynches have raised about, I would even say possible litigation if we go ahead without their consent.
So John, is it smarter to do a list of permitted improvements or a list of prohibited improvements?
I think, Mr. Hickey, at this time, rather than trying to solve this tonight, we need to get the parties
Okay.
in a room together.
The concern being that it has to be reversed.
With both Mr. Price and Mr. Ferrero,
Right.
so we get everyone in the room and say, look, this is what needs to be done, because so far we've done it piecemeal. The property owner has been interacting with staff here. I've heard the Laytons said this, I've heard the Lynches have said that. As you know, we need agreements.
Yep. Get everybody in the room.
The good news is, we're going to get you there, right? There's a process to get you there. No one is saying, don't use Bedminster Terrace as a road, because it's already on paper a road. It's unimproved, it hasn't been serving as a road, it's been serving as Lynch's driveway. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get you to the point that you can use the road as your driveway. When it's not being used as a driveway, then it becomes a road. And she would have the rights as any other property owner would have to access a road. So John is just laying out a process, but that process is designed to get you that access that you're looking for.
Right, don't forget, with the whole reason why we wanted the title report is because we needed some direction as to who can make the call. So up until this point, we haven't known, and now we've gotten confirmation that yes, it was in 1917 or whatever year it was dedicated as a road. So now we know at least the framework by which we can go out and make this happen. The next step is to get everybody in the room so everybody understands, everybody signs off on it, and then you're off and running. So, you know, this is not another kick the can down the road. We're actually making progress here.
Appreciate it. So can we set the date? Because I've been waiting since October and it kind of hold my permits.
We can set up a meeting as soon as you speak with the Laytons and Lynches and indicate this is what we want to do, and ask them when they're available for a meeting.
If we want to have Mr. Ferrero involved, what you're saying, Thursday morning is the best time. When the
Okay,
engineer is available on a Thursday
Yes, I
morning.
can get them on board on Thursday.
Okay.
We're talking in 9 days or 2 days?
2 days.
Godspeed.
I am not available Thursday, the 30th, 31st. Obviously, at short notice, I am available the 24th and Thursdays after that.
The 24th.
try to do the
is this
24th.
Thursday. Yeah, it's this Thursday, the
That is this-
24th.
Yeah, I know that. So I am available,
The 31st?
no, the 31st I'm not available. I have something with Judge Miller for another township. The 24th I am, and the 7th and 14th, yes. Or the 21st.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the date?
Um,
This week we cannot meet.
Okay,
This
so
week is okay.
Yeah, this week is
Okay,
good.
so this week in
But
2
they might
days-
not be able to.
But, so if you can get the Lynches,
Yeah,
you can get the
give it-
Lynches. Layton's probably not as important, but you can get the Lynches.
the
That's your
7th,
start.
the 14th, and the 21st, although we really,
Have to get everybody.
we got to get everyone. It
Because
doesn't
you're
make
gonna have
sense to have a
meetings down
meeting
the road.
with Lynch and this property owner and then do it with Layton's.
Well, I don't know that Layton's have necessarily any possessory rights to that road. When they're ready to go when they're ready to use it, then it becomes a
It's
road.
your call, but from what I'm hearing from this property owner is the Laytons are on board. So to the extent we could get the Laytons in the room, I would like to do that as well, unless the committee feels they're not needed as part of this process.
Well, I think we should certainly send the invitation.
Agreed.
Yes, and he was
Agreed.
the one who suggested, I want to meet with 2 of you because this is my future access to my property, so he'll be okay as soon as he's available.
That's great,
Thank you.
because we get everyone together, we can move very quickly.
Yes, because it holds my permit and it
Well,
just...
ma'am, just recall, it's township property. The committee is doing you a favor by even considering this request.
I understand, but you know, it's been for 30 years.
Please be patient.
I'm not patient. When is it October?
Paul Farrell comes in at 10 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay.
He's here from 10 to 12, so if we could get it in that time frame.
Yes, I'll send him an email tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on old business, short-term rentals.
There's a little report
Huh?
that I gave everybody.
Yeah.
If you, from Jeff Price.
Oh, that's what this was about.
Yes. This was called into us from a local, a resident about these two properties. The resident was trolling, what's the name of the place?
Airbnb?
Airbnb, and a couple of the others. Trulia? Anyway, and called Jeff Price, and he investigated it and sent letters to these two property owners.
January 8th? Any response?
Not yet.
Interesting.
Moving right along.
Moving right, Doug, anything else on,
Nothing there.
yeah, the state did move forward with that, short-term rental tax. That's, I think, primarily affecting the shore communities.
yeah.
But we, once again, keep our eye on that. Engine braking, Colin.
No update there.
Okay. Hockman Park. Judy, so when we last discussed this, there's an indication from Jeff that the immediate improvements that the town was seeking had been addressed. Was there any other formal
So
indication from construction?
Mr. Durhey, who is not necessarily the same person we're dealing with for the improvements, he's that person's boss, has reached out to Mr. Price and myself a number of times recently with some other questions. Didn't really share with us where he's going with these questions, but his questions were about, was the affordability constraints to be in perpetuity?
That's exactly what the agreement says.
And the agreement does say
agreement
perpetuity?
says the affordability restraints on Pluckman Park are in perpetuity.
So we reminded him of that. He also has a pilot program that is still in place, but I think he's in the final 4 or 5 years of that pilot program. So we had questions about those two conditions on the property, and he really didn't share as to why he was asking those questions.
Okay. If we could get some writing from Jeff as to how he views the, and maybe it's, I'm not sure if it's Jeff or Ken, about how they view the improvements or repairs that were affected and the current state of the
Okay.
of the project itself.
It just sounds like there's something going on, and he's not really sharing what that is.
Well, we certainly, if he's going to do a transaction, he may need our consent, just as when he bought the property, he needed our consent to take advantage of the pilot agreement. However, I think right now, we're more focused on the safety and conditions of
Okay.
the
I'll have him do
residential
another,
complex.
update.
Great. Second bite of the apple for public comments. Are there any comments from the public?
Do you want to build a driveway onto your road in the hills, perhaps?
No, but my husband wants to put like a rooftop deck.
You need another deck. Then you can put a deck on top of that rooftop.
Exactly. He said the association will never notice it.
Subcommittee comments. Once again, starting to the right with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that, the event we had at Trump and the reorg Betty Work dinner was really nice. It was nice to be there with the Board of Ed. I think in the future, maybe we think about shortening it a bit or permitting the guests to dine as we go through our business. Obviously, this year was different with Mayor Parker leaving, and certainly all those words were justified and well earned. But the comments that I got back, all positive. The only negatives, people were starving. And towards the end, you had a lot of good things to say. You really did, and I thought we were losing some of the attention just because of the length of it, but the gentleman from CBS was outstanding. It was funny. The comments are great, and I thought it was a great event.
Mr. Stevens, Mr. Hickey, Mr. Hickey.
Thank you. Mayor, thank you. Just want to congratulate you again. It's weird looking over to my left and not seeing Mayor Parker here, but you have
Great to see you.
capably filled his shoes, and thank you. Well, job well done on your first official meeting up there in the center of the dais.
Thank you, Colleen.
Great job. Mayor Jacobs, wave to Steve in case he's watching. So he's probably home watching right now. Congratulations, congratulations. We had a great time at Trump National as usual. And apparently it was really the largest turnout we've had.
That's great.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest we've ever had.
You know, so that was great.
And perhaps one of the reasons for the
Yeah.
biggest turnout, Committeewoman Moreski.
It's quite a committee women.
Thank you, Mayor Jacobs and everybody. Congratulations. It was great campaigning with you. It was a tremendous experience at Trump National. And I'm just really excited to be here.
Great.
It's going to be
Look
great.
forward.
Thank you, Renee, and for my comments, congratulations. You know, it was also really, really touching because, you know, we know Steve pretty well, right? We've been up here with Steve for a very long time. And, you know, as we were putting this together and reaching out to Wayne Cabot, a little concerned about whether it was going to be a little too much. Too much for Steve, but I think it was just right, and I think it was really appreciated by Steve. We do have an executive
Mayor,
session
I have
tonight.
one minor
Yes,
comment.
yes, please.
Since this is your first meeting as mayor in 2019,
2019,
I think we at least have to mention once the...
farmers market.
That's it.
That was good, John.
How did we almost do it?
Starting June 2019.
Almost got through one.
Thank you, John.
You're
Weather will
welcome,
be
Mayor.
turning quickly. Tomorrow-
We do have an executive session.
Yeah, of course we do.
So we have two matters to discuss in executive session. We will not be taking action when we return, but we do need a motion to move to executive session.
So moved, Mayor.
And I will be. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. Bye, good to see you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, we are off to executive session. What are we gonna do with this one? You never know.
Get back.
1 year could be enough.
Keep that one on ice.
By the way,
We are back from executive session. Judy, are we still, we're taping now?
We are on.
We are on. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Hi.
And when you see the former Mayor Parker, tell him thanks for the airplanes.
Sure. What is it?
What he'll stop.